G'day, and welcome to the first, I suppose, real video here on the Great Southern Saws. So today what we're going to be building is a knockoff or a clone of the MS361. You'll see on my channel I build a lot of the Pharmatech Hutzel saws. Still chainsaws and Husqvarna chainsaws in Australia, they cost an absolute arm and a leg. And I don't sell these saws, guys. I operate a few. Most of my chainsaws have got hundreds and hundreds of hours on them. And if built properly, you generally find they won't fail. But on the whole, I basically I build a lot of saws and give them away. So this particular saw, this particular MS361 clone, I'm building this for a Australian wildlife shelter called Narbieview. Narbieview Wombat Sanctuary or Narbieview Animal Rescue Shelter, based out in Arbourthong in Victoria. They rescue a lot of wombats. Shelley and Rodney Stafford down there with help of some really good volunteers. They look after a lot of rescued wombats, sugar gliders, some Australian native parrots. Last time I was there, they even had a tawny frogmouth, which is not an owl, guys. I learned it's a thing called a nightjar. So good on them. They're really, really good people. They do really, really good things for the Australian wildlife. And they do it for nothing. They don't get any reward from it as such, other than looking after and releasing those animals back to where they're from. So enough about that. Let's get on to building the saw. Okay, so the first thing that it's probably the most crucial thing really is these saws. I actually reckon they're pretty good, eh? Like the quality in the beginning of these saws when they were bringing them out and importing them to all the corners of the world wasn't that great. But the quality of these parts that they're making now is it's brilliant, really. It really is brilliant. There's a few parts that I would change, like I wouldn't put in there. So for example, the needle bearings that go on basically your piston wrist pin, I would change that one. And I would also change the clutch drum bearing as well. The seals, I haven't had any issues with the seals. So yeah, I wouldn't bother with them. The bearings that go into the crankcase, so these bearings, again, I haven't found anything wrong with them, but what I will say is all of these parts need to be cleaned properly. You won't be able to see it, I don't think. See if it focuses on there. No, it's not going to focus, but there is tiny little pieces of metal from the milling process and the machining process and all that sort of jazz. So what I like to do with these saws is, before I assemble these pieces, I like to give them a really good clean. Now, I know a lot of you guys out there, you use brake cleaner and carby cleaner and all that sort of jazz. There's nothing wrong with that. It's absolutely fine. I'm not making these videos for people to argue or for me to have an argument with people. There's a million and one ways to skin a cat, okay? This is just the way that I do it. I'm not here looking for criticism. I'm not here looking to say that this is the best way to build a saw, because it's not. It's not. This is how I build a saw. So what I use, and I've got plenty of this stuff because I also do a fair bit of TIG welding, as you can probably see by my bench here, but I just use acetone. Acetone on a rag, and I just clean everything up, make sure that there's nothing on these cases, and then start assembly. And I'll do the same thing for all the parts. So it's same deal. Piston, I'll wipe it out with acetone. Cylinder, wipe it out with acetone. Everything that I'm putting onto this saw, I'll wipe out with acetone. Now on this particular saw, I'm not going to be changing any bearings and things on this saw. As I said, I'm giving this saw away. I'll be running it in, so I'll do all the braking procedure on this saw as well. Yeah, I'll be giving this saw away, so that Narbieview can have a little raffle or whatever, and they're going to raffle this saw off with some other bits and pieces that they've got, and hopefully make some money to put again towards their animal rescue shelter. So I'll be back with you in a minute. I'm just going to clean this saw up. We'll clean these crank halves up, and then we'll put the crank in, and we'll put this crankcase together. Alright, so guys, I've cleaned up the crankcases, and just want to show you something. This is why we're clean. When they get shipped, and they've got like rust preventative or corrosion preventative oil put on there, and it's, yeah, that actually traps some of the milling swarf and things, so that's done. So I've cleaned the crankshaft up. I've cleaned all internally the crankcase. I'm not so much worried about the outside of it yet, because we're not installing anything on the outside yet. When we get to that, we will clean that up. But I've given the bearings a clean out in the crankcase halves, just to make sure they're clean. Unfortunately, these things come with the seals already pressed and the bearings already pressed in. It's not my favourite way of doing it. I'd rather press them in myself. That way I can make sure they're where I want them. That way I know that everything's going to run smooth, it's not going to drag or anything like that. I can also control them. So I usually use SKF brand bearings for everything. I just think that they're a great quality bearing. But as I said, in this one here, we're just going to run with what's supplied with the saw, just so we can see that, hey, look, these saws do work. If you take a little bit of time and monitor the quality of what you do, you can actually get a really good saw. There's nothing wrong with these saws. They're not a pro saw, and as long as you have that understanding going into it, you know, there's nothing wrong with this for mum and dad cutting down firewood or cutting down trees and, you know, bucking up firewood. As I said, I've got hundreds and hundreds of hours on my saws, and they go like cut snakes. They really do. So anyways, I'm going to get this crankshaft in here, and then I'll get back to you and I'll show you what it looks like with the crankshaft in. Okay? So that's the crankcase there. It's joined together. It's actually held together by 5 screws. So the placement of the screws, let me see if I can get something to point with. You have one there, one here, one up there, and you have one there and one down here. Now they're a M5 by 25 mil. I'm sorry to my American friends, I have no idea what that is in Imperial. M5 by 25. Obviously tighten them up FT tight. And yeah, so a couple of things to note. Before assembling your crankcase halves, you want to get your oil tube or oiler hose, I guess it is, installed into this half of the crankcase. It just pulls in, but what you might want to note is that the bottom of the oiler hose has like a tongue sticking off of it, and that sits inside a groove here. That's how you know you've got it in the correct orientation. If you haven't got it in that orientation, it's going to leak and it's going to carry on, and it's just going to be a nightmare. You have to pull your saw apart. If you've already compressed the gasket, you may end up having to replace the gasket in there, so it's no good. take your time putting it together. Don't go belting it. Don't go. You know, there's no need for brute force putting a chainsaw together, in my opinion. You're entitled to your opinion. You might think that smacking a saw with a hammer or a mallet is the way to go, and if it works for you, then why not? But I don't do it. So you'll notice that. Don't know whether it'll pick it up. For assembly lube, I just use two-stroke oil. Think about it logically, guys. The saw runs on fuel and two-stroke oil. That's how it lubricates itself. So my assembly lube is two-stroke oil. That's all I use, just regular two-stroke oil. I don't run, this is the two-stroke oil I use for my assembly. The light's a bit glarish, but it's just Castrol Garden 2T oil. I don't run my saws on this. I just use this as assembly lube. It's cheap lube. Cheap two-stroke oil. So yeah, I think we'll end this assembly video here for now. Obviously it'll be part 2 where we put all the ancillaries onto the PTO side. Well, maybe I should quickly tell you that. So I don't know. I'm new to this, guys. I'm new to the whole YouTube thing. I probably shouldn't make assumptions about what people do and don't know. So there is an output side. Obviously, this is your output side of your crankcase. It's the busiest looking side of the lot. Obviously, your bar will come on this side. Your clutch, your oiler, your chain brake, everything's on that side, and your flywheel is on this side. Now, the easiest way for you to tell which side of your crankshaft goes in, the very, very easy way is that your let me see if I can find it. I don't know if the camera will pick that up. Your keyway goes on your flywheel side. That's actually what locks your flywheel in place. So the keyway goes on the flywheel side of the crankcase. And obviously then you've got your clutch side or your PTO or output side, whatever you like. That's a really busy side of the crankshaft. You've got threads on there for the clutch drum to stick on. You've got a circlip back here to retain your oil plate. And you've got another one on the front there to hold your clutch drum on. So hopefully you guys can get out there and build your own saws. Really, this is what this is about. I don't make any money out of this, guys. I don't even think I've got 10 subscribers. If you do like what I'm showing you, please just hit the like and subscribe buttons. Doesn't cost anything. It really helps me out. Everything I do on this channel is to help you guys build your own saws or show you how to build your own saws. And we're going to be doing some saws a little bit later on to show some porting. This saw's not going to have any porting. It's just going to be factory, just everything factory. Factory gaskets, factory everything. But everything I do on here is to show you guys how I go about doing it and maybe help you guys that are trying to build saws maybe see another way of doing it, because as I said, there are a lot of ways to do this. And yeah, all of these saws, I give them away. I give them away. I mean, how many saws does a man need? I've got 3 of my own personal saws. How many do you need? So please, if you like what I'm doing, like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Great Southern Saws, Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. See you guys.